Well, right now, the former police chief in New Haven is preparing to face a judge.
Karl Jacobson will appear in court today after he allegedly admitted to stealing thousands of dollars from the city. Your reporter Roger Susanen is live outside Superior Court in New Haven with more on the investigation and today's hearing. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies. You know, later this morning, former police chief Karl Jacobson will walk up these courthouse steps and face a judge on larceny charges as he's set for his arraignment today. And members of his own department were part of the team of investigators who say they uncovered more than $85,000 worth of thefts over 2 years. Karl Jacobson's career and legacy began crumbling in early January when some of his fellow officers questioned him about missing money from the department's confidential informant fund. Investigators say Jacobson admitted to stealing $10,000 and begged his assistant chiefs to let him replace the cash and retire. But instead, state police were called in to investigate, and they allegedly uncovered that Jacobson's crimes were much more extensive. CSP claims the former chief stole more than $85,000 from the city over 2 years. Most of the cash was from the confidential informant fund, but about $4,000 was from the department's activity league, which funds programs like toy drives to help out local children at Christmas time.
It's also, I think, almost hurtful that there was $4,000 stolen that was intended for kids. You know, that shows a level of judgment that's shocking.
And that was the voice of New Haven Mayor Justin Elicker. He says now it is up to city leaders to hopefully help rebuild the public's trust. Jacobson did retire when this whole situation happened. He claims that part of the issues stem from a gambling problem. We'll have more on that part of the story coming up a little bit later this hour. Reporting live this morning in New Haven, I'm your reporter Roger Susanen, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.